Hi there, it's Catherine, your lawyer friend and guide, and this is the #1 podcast for legal careers in Japan.
Welcome to the Lawyer on Air podcast. Today's special guest is Catherine O'Connell herself, the founder and host of the Lawyer on Air podcast. And I'm a special host for the show today, Yoko Oshima, with Microsoft leading the Corporate, External, and Legal Affairs Japan team. I have the pleasure of knowing Catherine through various legal and business community engagements and really admire her inclusive, generous, and can-do approach. She is, of course, a wonderful podcast host, but today I'm excited that we spend time to hear her own wisdom and insights on legal career and beyond and learn about what made who she is. Hi, Catherine.
Yoko, hello. Thank you for taking the microphone today and interviewing me. It's a real pleasure.
It's a pleasure and honor. Are you ready, Catherine?
Yes, I'm ready, Yoko.
Great. So let's start with your signature warm-up question. Imagine we were meeting in person. Where are we, and what are you ordering from the menu?
Thank you for this question. Well, I think the place that you gather is all about the atmosphere and the staff who look after you. And I think you know, Hotel Indigo, Shibuya, Tokyo, where you and I had dinner, is my choice for this answer. I celebrated my 3rd Lawyer on Air anniversary party there a couple of years ago, and it's my go-to for regular gatherings with women lawyers and leaders in the community. The people there know my name. They look after me and my guests really well. So what am I selecting? Well, it's very obvious. It's always champagne. And if it's a little too early for bubbles, then I'm ordering a flat white coffee. It's now on their menu. Now I choose flat white because it's a perfect balance of strong coffee with smooth milk. And it reminds me of my New Zealand home. With local Shibuya coffee roasted beans, it represents that blend of where I'm from and where I've chosen to build my life.
So thank you, Catherine. Yes, you kindly took me there for dinner and we just had a wonderful time. And as you said, it sort of gave us a home atmosphere, welcoming staffs, great food, and yes, those environment makes a big difference in how we interact. So thank you. So you talked about New Zealand, your home. The older I grow, the more I feel that our core nature remains pretty much the same as in childhood. Can you please share what you were like as a child and also your upbringing in New Zealand?
Oh, this is such a delightful question. I think growing up in New Zealand, I was drawn to understanding how things worked. Like, Dad had a vegetable garden. Why did the vegetables in the garden need to be in different places? Why was the kiwi fruit plant a male and a female plant? How do you change the oil in the car or fix a tire? These are things that I kind of learnt really early on in my youthful and childhood days. I also loved doing secret codes and messages with my youngest brother. We spent a lot of time doing this, investigating things. And so I think that curiosity about investigating led me into this fascination with cross-culture and legal career. And I'll say this, Yoko, that most people wouldn't think it's true, and maybe you too, that my core nature is actually that I'm a very shy person. Most people won't believe this, but it's absolutely true.
No.
It's absolutely true. I was so shy in class, I hardly spoke up. I didn't think I had anything to say, nothing worthy, and that no one wanted to listen to me. But when I was 14, I had an English teacher who took a shine to me and she made me feel seen. I'll never forget her. And actually it makes me well up a little bit with some tears, but she helped me see that what I thought and what I wrote was worth something. She had a really amazing vocabulary and she asked such curious questions and it made me just bring up images in my mind. So I kind of think shyness and confidence is like they're roommates living together. They coexist. This shyness inside me has never fully gone away, but even before today, I have a flutter of nervousness. before an interview. And I've learned, though, that curiosity and shyness are actually together. So I'm not 100% extroverted, though I might come to that point from time to time. But what I've learned is that channeling both introversion and deep listening through questions gives you that kind of superpower to shine. So perhaps they're two sides of a coin, shyness and confidence.
Thank you for sharing shyness and confidence as two sides of the coin. And you have a big supporter who believed in you, who helped you bloom to where you are now. It's so wonderful to hear that. You began your career as a Japanese speaking tour guide. What motivated you to study Japanese and how did you land on that first job?
Well, I work basically on a gut feeling. I feel it's either a yes or no. And I've learnt over the years, especially recently, that this is never wrong. I'll tell you what, when I finished the formal years of my schooling, so what we called sixth form, so I was 16, we had an optional year to go ahead and do another year, seventh form. So I was 17. But into that program, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I knew it was a no, that I shouldn't be there. We got to wear these amazing blazers that were distinguishing us as the top of the school, but it didn't feel very attractive to me. And I didn't see the point in being at school just to show off, shall we say. So I went off to the local technical training institute and I heard about this course called Japanese for Tourism and Trade. And I had a fascination then at that moment to work in the tourism industry, and Japanese seemed the most challenging option, so different from French when I'd learnt that at school and did really bad in it. So once I started learning Japanese, I was so hooked. I loved the language. I was completely entranced by it, something that English doesn't really have. And so the role at JTB was really perfect because it combined my language and my love of investigating that I talked about before, helping people navigate unfamiliar territory. And looking back, I think JTB was a really good preparation for being a lawyer. And secretly, I had actually worked for a smaller tour company before JTB. So I was known in the market. And when the JTB role came up, I applied for the job and I got a mix of tour coordinator work and I could keep on the road as a tour guide as a backup.
Wow, but it's amazing that you chose Japanese among all the options when, as you said, Japanese is so different from English. And also, it sounds like the curiosity that you cultivated in your childhood helped you to push the door to open to apply to the new world. That's amazing. Then you started your legal career at Anderson Lawyers in Christchurch, New Zealand, and then moved to Japan in the fall of 2002. What drew you to switch and pursue a legal career? Are you surprised that you're still in Japan after 23 years?
I am. I'll get to that. Believe it or not, though, it was Japanese lawyers who were my clients on the tours for JTB who were truly a huge inspiration for me. You never really know who's going to inspire you along your path and tell you something that you were always meant to be or that you were always destined to do. So the transition into law felt natural in many ways because I was already doing what lawyers do, helping people understand complex systems and find their way through, whether that's helping the tourists navigate their way into looking at New Zealand, for example. So I know the reality of law and studying it is actually not that easy, but I was driven and diligent and had tenacity. It took me, I should say, longer to grasp concepts in law and work the way of studying law. But when the penny dropped, I was on my way. So, as I said, it was Japanese lawyers who were my clients. They asked me lots of questions about the law, the court system, and how business is set up in New Zealand. And I knew nothing about the answers to these questions. So it forced me to do research. And through that, I grew to study law and love it. Around the same time, though, a person popped up in my life who I now know to be a mentor. He had done law at Keio and he could see potential in me, even if I didn't see it myself. He told me, you could be a Japanese speaking lawyer for Japanese people in New Zealand. So, with those two experiences, it opened my mind up to knowing that things are possible if people tell you things that they see in you that you don't know. You can accept or reject anyone's offer of information. That's up to you. So, that's why I studied law. And I'm really surprised that I'm still here. Honestly, yes, because I came planning for 2 years maximum, I told myself, because I didn't know what Japan was really like and if I could survive. But I've discovered along the way, especially speaking to guests on the podcast here, that successful careers in Japan are in decades, not years. And you can impose a self restriction on yourself, but actually, you got to be really careful not to unconsciously adopt that mindset that Japan is only 1 year or 2 years. That limits you. So be more open minded. And so here I am 23 years later.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like at the stage important for you in your life, you have supporters or mentors who believe in you and who guided you or who encouraged you to take a road to a new chapter. Your school teacher at the age you're 14, and this Keio Japanese person who encouraged you to be a Japanese speaking lawyer helping Japanese companies. That's wonderful. And then you called that person, that gentleman, a mentor. Was there any other pivotal moment or mentor or experience that truly confirmed law was what you wanted to do?
I don't think there was ever a single moment where law was what I thought was definitely what I wanted to do. It's more an evolution. I think there was one experience that showed me the profound impact that legal work can have. Shall I share that story?
Of course, please do.
Well, I was in the middle of an extremely high risk meaning I had a bodyguard looking after me, ethical compliance investigation in China as the company's in-house counsel. And an employee that we were interviewing, that's outside counsel and myself, had kept documents for years, knowing that someday they might be crucial evidence. And I didn't know this. But in the middle of the meeting, a very tense meeting with him, he bent down, he pulled out these documents from his bag and slid them across the desk to me. And he said, "You are the only one I trust to give this information to. If you'd not been here, I would never have trusted anyone else." And that was the moment that crystallized literally everything for me. Being a lawyer is not just about legal experience, it's about the people that can trust you in their most vulnerable moments. So that work was really challenging, but it got me to the point where I knew everything I'd done up until then was meant for that moment, for someone to trust me enough. He could lose his job, he could be in danger physically, but gave me those documents. So that's the point. I guess after an evolution of time, I found I was meant to be a lawyer.
That's such a powerful story. And also that trust that person in China had to you is just tremendous. And he knew that the information he entrusted to you would be handled properly by you. And otherwise, yes, as he said, and as you said, that information in that documents would never have been available to anyone. That's just so powerful.
And it was a turning point. It changed everything, and we got to completion because of that moment.
Right. And when you look back your career journey, because like you moved from New Zealand to Japan and then worked for Japanese companies and also worked from like switch from private practice to in-house and so forth, what were the biggest adjustments you needed to make, both culturally or professionally?
I think the biggest shift was language and a different style of lawyering in Japan. The Japanese I'd learned at JTB and used in the law firm back in New Zealand was good enough, but it didn't equip me for real on the ground Japanese in Japan. And it didn't help me with the unseen ways that things are done in Japan. the do's and the don'ts aren't written everywhere. You can't find it. You have to, I guess, learn by trial and error and just living here and observing daily life. So that was one thing. And on the lawyering side, it was a complete change in my DNA to be an in-house lawyer compared to private practice. I was told very early on, please ditch the outside lawyer persona and become an inside lawyer. And I didn't really know the difference, but I had to work that out. The most profound shift was learning to think, as I mentioned before, long term, because in New Zealand, career progression is quite rapid. In Japan, it takes a longer time. And credibility and influence is so important here through consistency and relationship building. So it forced me to develop what I'd call strategic patience, understanding that the most valuable opportunities come from those investments in the years made earlier.
Strategic patience. That's a sort of the magic word, and it says a lot about how one can succeed in the Japanese legal community or Japanese business community. And I wonder if that's connected to the fact that you're originally planning to stay in Japan for a short term, but after investing and taking time in Japan, you're still here after 23 years.
I think you've got that spot on.
And indeed, about private practice, I felt that I myself need to make a huge transition when I moved from law firms to in-house versus switching from just Japanese law firm to US law firm. So I really resonate with what you just shared. And then you went back to private practice after several in-house roles at Hogan Lovells. Going back and forth, how did each side's experience and learning help the other side when you look back?
Oh, it's a great question. I think each side taught me something that the other side couldn't. Private practice taught me real technical precision, commercial awareness. You learn really fast when your advice impacts billable outcomes, that's for sure. But in-house roles taught me the dynamics of the organization, strategic thinking, and how you understand that your legal decisions or the legal decisions ripple through the entire business ecosystem. So, what I learned from interviewing many legal professionals on this podcast too is that the most valuable lawyers are those who can bridge both of those worlds. They understand both the technical craft and the business context with the human side of being a lawyer and understanding that your counterpart, whether that be an internal or external client, what they need and what they're wanting for their own success. And so I think that's been the real learning on both sides.
That's great. And with all your learnings and all the experiences, you started your own firm. What prompted you to choose that path? And how are you liking your current position compared to your past roles?
You know, no one's asked me that before, how I like it. It's the first time.
And how do you like it?
Well, let's answer the first bit there is that, yes, indeed, you said it. After building lots of expertise in various organizational contexts, in-house, in private practice, for foreign firms, for Japanese companies, I reached a point where I thought I want to really directly apply this to serve clients while having the flexibility to continue a lot of other interests. Okay, so I might say I'm not just a lawyer. I have these other interests in community building, mentorship, those kinds of things. So having my own practice means I can actually structure my work to align with my values while I'm still developing and delivering excellent client service. So, you know, I do love it. It's all on me, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And if I might say, winning those two awards, Foreign Lawyer of the Year in 2022 and Boutique Law Firm of the Year in 2023, were huge endorsements from my peers in the community about my approach to doing law and about the business model. I already knew it inside myself, but having that external validation put the cream on the top. So this law firm independence has given me that chance to create this podcast. I would never have thought of that, I don't think, unless I was doing my own business. And it's also given me the invitation to board roles because my conflict level was acceptable. So going solo, I don't think has rejected my previous experiences. It's more about synthesizing all of them into something quite unique that's me.
Wow, that's great. Synthesizing all you built to something unique to you. That's wonderful. And the listeners who are listening to this podcast think, wow, Catherine has achieved a lot and then got so many hours as external validation, and I can't be like her. But you have shared in the past episodes of this podcast the difficult times in your career journey with transparency. There may be listeners who are struggling now and having self doubts. Do you have any advice to those people?
It almost feels a little bit like imposter syndrome and self doubt. I'm really glad you asked me this because I've been dying to talk about it. I really feel it's simply a confidence gap, and it exists for men and for women. Men don't tend to talk about it so much, but if you look at them, listen closely to them, and observe them very carefully, they also have a confidence gap inside. So I feel like I want to call it a confidence gap. And I mentioned to you before, I'm terribly shy, but pushing through has been an important thing. And the only way to develop confidence is to earn it. The confidence that you can bounce back from failure is earned by working through previous failures. The confidence that you can deliver a speech is earned by the previous speeches you've given. The confidence that you can host a podcast, Yoko, is earned by the previous guests that you've interviewed. So in the beginning, you need enough courage to practice, even though it may not go well. And over time, your skills improve. Your courage absolutely transforms into confidence. So courage first and confidence later. And that's the advice I'd give to people is have that courage, just even a bit of it, and get started with courage, and confidence will absolutely come. I believe in this 100%.
That's great, Catherine. Have courage and confidence follows. And I gather as you have in your career journey or your life journey, there must be people for everyone who believe in you and who encourage you to take the courage and build the confidence.
Absolutely. I think that happened with my school teacher and that Keio graduate telling me, helping me understand to go and do law. That took a lot of courage, but I had someone who believed in me, and that enabled me to have the courage to believe in myself. And I think that's a really good example of how courage worked to be a confident person in the end.
And through the Lawyer on Air, you have interviewed 100 legal trailblazers, with which you have what you call a library of wisdom. And I know you're writing a book to share that wisdom. Would you like to share a little with listeners about that book?
Well, I'm discovering that the most successful professionals here in Japan share certain themes, mindsets. They feel like they're the only one going through something, but in fact, many of them have gone through similar things. And so I'm bringing episodes from the Lawyer on Air podcast and transforming them into stories. And there are multiple people within one chapter on a certain theme explaining their way of approaching, for example, confidence. And so I'm bringing those together. So it's thinking about, again, synthesizing these patterns that I've been hearing from various people and bringing it all together. So I'd rather not spoil the excitement for everybody, but I'm really glad to finally announce that I am officially writing this book. And I'm featuring many of the people who have been on the podcast, including you, Yoko. So
Really?
it's on its way, and I really thank you for asking that question.
Of course. Well, I can't wait to read that book. And I'm sure many people listening to the podcast are dying to read that book as well.
Thank you.
Changing the gear a little bit, this world is rapidly changing, and you shared a lot about what you learned with your curiosity and how you build on your experiences today. At the same time, you also mentioned unlearning is as important as, if not more, learning. Is there something you have unlearned recently?
I think I've unlearned the need to be perfect before I'm ready.
Mm,
I used to always think I had to be perfect before I was ready. For so long, I thought I had to have all the answers before I could contribute meaningfully to a conversation or have everything written out to take on a challenge. And I realized that actually imperfection is perfect. Imperfection itself is perfect. It's where the growth happens, it's where authentic connection happens, it's where you can actually find real learning. And so, for the women I've interviewed here who've had the most impact, those are the ones who've been willing to also be imperfect in public and learn out loud and show that they were figuring things out even as they were leading. And so, it's through those people too that I've learnt imperfection's okay. Imperfection is perfection.
Imperfection is perfection is a profound expression. And it's so great that you connected that with authenticity. And as you shared in your past episodes, like a vulnerability can sometimes move the people and touch the people even more profoundly. So, what you said right now has a lot of layers of messages inside. Now expanding the landscape from just legal profession to even broader landscape. You're also deeply committed to serving to the legal and business communities in Japan. As you mentioned, in your past roles as the president of Women in Law Japan from 2020 to 2024 and vice chair of ANZCCJ, Australia New Zealand Chamber of Commerce in Japan for 10 years until July 2025. What draws you to take part in these roles?
Mm, I think I've been the beneficiary of so much generosity, as I've mentioned, even when I didn't recognize it at the time. My teacher, the Keio guy. I've been that beneficiary of so much generosity from people who've shared their knowledge and opened doors for me. And the legal and business communities in Japan are actually really interconnected. And I've just seen firsthand how much stronger we all become when we actively support each other. So, being involved in these organizations is not just about giving back, it's also about building forward to the kind of professional ecosystem I want to work in and I want to see others working in. I think I've got my inspiration inherently from my dad. He was really active in an organization that was there for families in New Zealand that didn't have as much as all the rest of us. And at the drop of a hat, he would go out and help those families. And I would see him do that. He'd get calls at home and he'd go and take a food parcel to a family. And he never complained and he just did it. And one day he was looking after us when mum was at work and he couldn't leave us behind. So I went with him on a delivery. And instead of staying in the car, he took me to the doorstep of this house. And I saw inside the house a house that was completely different to my own house. Children with hardly wearing anything, etc. And we're not a rich family by any means, but it was that absolute moment that my dad showed me that gave me the insight to knowing that people don't always have as much as we have. We have so many gifts: food, time, information, experiences, insights, kind words. All of these are things that we should give back and can give back. So it's a decision between staying where you are or giving back and giving forward. And that's why I get involved in ANZCCJ and Women in Law, because it's very natural for me to do that.
Thank you. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you better through various legal and business community events. You also kindly came to our company meeting as a guest speaker. And throughout all these interactions, you have left a strong impression of me as someone who is willing to extend a helping hand when you can. And you have a generous high capacity in terms of when you can. And your story about your father seems to have lots of influence on you as to how you approach and how you act. You already touched upon this, but any other reflections you have on why and how you adapt that approach?
I think perhaps from that time it was quite natural to think about other people. And I often think these examples are sprinkled in front of us. It just depends on whether we notice them or not. So now I feel I'm naturally intentional on this. Growing up in New Zealand, there's this cultural expectation that you contribute to your community. But I think living in Japan has given me this concept of ongaishi, returning favors and obligations. But I don't think it's only that. I think it's preempting the favors from other people by being generous with time and insights before they ask you and not expecting anything in return. So I'm not sure if it's an example or not, but my success here is just that it's only been possible because people have been generous with their time. So I try and think when I meet someone what they need before they ask me and try to help deliver it. And I guess maybe it's from that time of observing dad or the way that New Zealand is, but it's ingrained in me. And so I adopt that and hope that I'm some kind of example or role model for others when they see that happen.
I'm sure you're being a role model of many people with your generosity, and preempting the favors is a great expression again as to like how to describe your approach. And yes, you are. I can assure that when you do these favors or when you do provide support to others, it's clear that you're not expecting anything in return. You are doing it because you can. And that's wonderful and very generous of you. What advice would you give to lawyers who want to expand beyond the legal side into areas like you have in public affairs or ESG or purpose driven roles?
Well, I would say just start with curiosity, being really curious about how your organization creates its value beyond legal, beyond compliance. I would say ask to attend meetings that you're a little curious about. Budget meetings, maybe, marketing presentations, strategic planning. It's not always the lawyer who points out the risks, but sometimes someone who gets to learn how the business really works is the one who can have the most success. So find that area. You mentioned ESG. Maybe it's that. Maybe because you understand regulatory trends, it might be really good for you, but you don't know ESG enough. Try to find that way of getting inside and being able to be more curious about things beyond the law. I think a lawyer who brings solutions, not just identifies problems, is the most important, but you can't always bring the solutions unless you've been curious about other things going on. So I would say curiosity. Think about places where you can say, hey, could I join your meeting about that and observe you in the corner or help facilitate? Offering your services is probably the best way to start.
Thank you for sharing, Catherine. And while listening to you, I was thinking about your sharing of your childhood stories, of your curiosity. And the consistent message you are sharing is be curious, take the courage, and earn confidence through working on the things you are doing. So now allow me to ask about your board roles. You have had exposure to governance through board roles at leading companies in Japan, including Toyota and Fujitsu. The listeners can listen to your past podcast where you talked about the boardroom readiness and how you earned those roles. When did you first realize governance was a space you could contribute?
This is such a great question because many people ask me about the preparation, but not actually how I got interested in it. So thank you again for a really original question for me. I think I realized governance was a space that I could contribute to when I saw patterns across different organizations, the same strategic challenges, the same governance gaps. And my legal background gave me a foundation in risk assessment and compliance and law, which is what is sought out by boards. But it was really my cross cultural experience and community involvement that helped me understand how to ask the right questions and facilitate board discussions. Even in one of my interviews, someone went into this Lawyer on Air podcast with one of my guests and expanded on a question that I had asked one of my guests. So I think that's rather interesting. It wasn't about law, it wasn't about compliance, it wasn't about ethical investigations. It was about how I asked a question in a podcast to a lawyer about their career, and they pulled out that as one question to ask me. So, yeah, I think it's more than just I deserve a law board role because I'm a lawyer and I've done all these things and boards need this. It's not an expectation, it's really earned. And so, seeing those patterns, I think that really helped me, as well as that cross cultural experience and community involvement. I absolutely believe that.
Seeing the pattern in the legal communities. Thank you, Catherine. And the ability to ask right questions is again connected to the curiosity you have. Without curiosity, you won't ask questions. And with curiosities, you can ask questions. And then the board role, as you said, is beyond legal or compliance or investigation expertise. How did you prepare for that shift in mindset that is from being a legal advisor to being a board level or oversight professional?
This is so critical. I think many lawyers think I'm a lawyer, so I must be able to just be the same when I'm on the board. But I had to think like an owner, I think is the most important thing. Think like an owner of a business, not just an employee or a legal advisor to the employer. As a legal advisor, my job was to identify those problems, recommend solutions. But as a board member, I think your role is to ensure the organization has the right systems and the leadership to identify and solve those problems independently. So I also had to get really comfortable with ambiguity because there's no real right answer in governance. It's a better decision or a less worse decision based on what can often be just imperfect information. So thinking with a CEO mindset really changed how I was approaching boards rather than putting my legal persona on. I kind of left it at the door in a way and brought this ownership of a CEO into the room instead.
Thank you. I was picturing you leaving legal persona at the door and then like go and open the door and
Yes,
enter the door with CEO. Actually, you mentioned two hats, CEO hat and owner hat. Owner
yes.
can be the shareholder who CEO is serving to. So I think these two angles can provide different perspectives. And yes, it's very, at least those hats are very different from legal advisor hat.
Absolutely. And if you're the CEO or the owner, you're spending your money. And so when you're a lawyer, you often think about someone else spending the money. It's not connected to me. But when you adopt that CEO mindset, anything that comes across the board agenda, if you own it like a CEO, you can feel more of the impact of where the energy is going into the spending of the funds or expanding the business. If you think about it from a CEO point of view, it's completely different to being a lawyer.
Right. Your message is when you like to start preparing to be a board member in future, be intentional to think as if you are a CEO or the owner. Would that
That's
make sense
right.
to you?
Like a question you might ask that's not very good is this a good investment for us? Whereas a good way of putting that would be, oh, what would need to be true for this investment to deliver the returns that we are expecting? Because that's what a CEO is going to ask themselves. What has to happen for this investment to be the returns that we wanted?
Right, or beneficial to the company.
Yes.
Is there any governance myth or misconception you think needs correcting?
I would say board meetings are often thought of as the place where decisions are not made,
Mm.
where they're not made. But especially in Japan with this Nemawashi, seeking out people aligning with each other before the meeting. But in Japan, actually, I think Nemawashi means that the meeting is not really decided in advance. And I want to explain that because if you think about Nemawashi, I think it separates the wheat from the chaff. And the chaff is that dry outer husk of the grain, the low quality stuff that we get rid of. And I think during Nemawashi, you're actually removing that part, the chaff. The irrelevant questions, tangential concerns, information that would bog you down in the actual meeting decision process. So what you bring into the boardroom is the valuable grain, the issues that really need discussing. And you bring the soil, and I think the soil is the people around the table who are making the decision. So Nemawashi, I think, is that sifting out of the stuff that we don't need and bringing in the goodness that we do need to actually get to a really good decision. I hope that kind of agricultural metaphor can help people get that in their mind. And that's what I think is really not understood about Nemawashi, and that people just believe the decisions made beforehand. I think Nemawashi's purpose is to distill out the impurities that are holding people back and bring in the pureness of what we actually need to then discuss and decide. So that would be my myth that I think needs correcting.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing. And then about Nemawashi, I don't think that's unique to Japan to do Nemawashi. Nemawashi, in a sense, is testing the water beforehand, and you said shifting unnecessary pieces so that people are aligned to focus on what's important for the company. And even in my US-based companies that I have worked, that similar arrangement or similar previous preparation does take place for the focused, meaningful discussion.
Right. And if you think of the meaning of Nemawashi, it's helping the roots, isn't it? Exposing the roots to adding nutrition, adding fertilizer, taking away the weeds that are holding back the growth. And so I think it's only because Japan's come up with this word Nemawashi that it gets labeled very easily by others to say that's how they do things in Japan. Whereas you've just given a perfect example that it's not original to Japan. Japan's just given it a name. Other countries may not have a name for it specifically, but it does happen elsewhere. So thank you for sharing that too.
Thank you. And well, I just really love the analogy you have just made between Nemawashi and agriculture process.
Comes from an agricultural country, so this is a natural analogy for me to make.
And for women and diverse professionals aiming for board roles, what are the most underrated things they can start doing today to prepare?
Well, I think first thing is obvious. It's financial literacy. And especially for lawyers, we don't always get trained in this. So, understanding what P&L is, but not just reading those, understanding how different business models create value and destroy value, and learning how to communicate these ideas simply with other board members who are probably going to be yards ahead of you, who already understand financials and P&Ls, and understanding those really in a sophisticated way. But I think the second thing that's really underrated is observing people's body language and what they don't say. I've witnessed one example here of an M&A presentation where the presenter was really being challenged and the deal got knocked over. And this person who was presenting got up from the table, banged his chair back in, slammed his iPad cover shut, and strutted out of the room. And in the post discussion, no one actually had picked up on that person reacting so negatively. To me, it was completely obvious. But the chair later spoke to this person when I'd mentioned, I think this person's going to be demotivated. We've had several deals that have been derailed, and he was at the height of his frustration. So bridging that actually was very important, because otherwise we could have had somebody who may have decided their value wasn't appreciated and they may have left. So that thing got sorted out. So I think watching how people sit in the chair before the meeting, how they get up afterwards, are they taking notes? Are they spinning their pen? Are their legs shaking? That's a good one. The tension in their faces and their hands and their body language really reveals how stressed they are, if they feel part of the team. What they don't say is actually more important than what they do say sometimes. So observation skills are actually not as intangible as you think. They can be very tangible for these high level situations and give us a missing cue that we might need.
Thank you for sharing such profound insights. Financial literacy is really an actionable item. And about observations, that sort of made me think about that's the area AI will still have challenges, and only people with good observation and judgments could have that sense.
I think you're right there. And so the point is to try and build that now. And if you've got those skills, keep going with them and building them even more deeply. Yeah, I think you've hit on a really good point there, where AI will lose out to the people who can observe body language and understand what's not said.
Well, we've been talking about your career journey, and career is important, of course, but it is a part of our lives. So I would like to ask you some questions around work life balance and work life harmony. You shared with me before that you recharge by spending time back home in New Zealand or spending time with friends and family. How do you carve out space to recharge, and why is that essential to you?
Well, recharging gives you that shift in perception, I think. You can get in Japan very ingrained in what Japan's like, and you miss what it's like outside of Japan and other worlds. And so, yes, going back to, say, New Zealand, I can realign myself with my childhood, with my family, with things going on there. And then I can see my life in Japan from the outside. I've got inverted commas around outside. It's outside to where I live. But I think, as well as traveling to home, it's the conversations I have with people here. I don't have family in Japan, so my friends and my colleagues become family to a certain extent, and how I can converse with them helps also recharge me. And this podcast, I have to say, is a primary place for me to recharge. Every guest teaches me something different about how I can shift my view on the world. It's this work that energizes me so much. And that's why the book that I'm writing is about the guests. I'm a person on the sidelines looking in. It's all of you who have taught me so much and helped recharge me and give me meaning to my work life because of this podcast. And unless perhaps you've done a podcast or had this experience of nearly 100 people who have shared their time with you, it's hard to understand that. But this podcast, speaking with you, for example, today, I'm already re-energized for the rest of the day or the week. So that's another perspective in my life that recharges me.
And then you are recharging me too through
Yeah,
this podcast. And yes,
great.
that's a great reminder that interactions of the people and sharing openly about thinking and feeling do help recharge ourselves.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes we're sort of, when we're upset, we might think, oh, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'll just stay
Right.
here. But it's actually that step of talking to someone that breaks that pattern, and you can readjust yourself, resync yourself.
Is there any personal ritual or habit that helps you reset when things get intense on the daily basis?
I think there's two things. Music. Music is definitely something. If I'm feeling in a bit of a rut or I feel stress coming up, I will actually just find something on Spotify and play it. maybe just 3 minutes, it may be several songs that just bring me back to a center. Music is one of the most beautiful things I find that readjusts me. And the other thing is getting outside and taking a walk, whether it's just around my building or down the street and back. It's just, again, breaking a pattern. And if I've got more time, walking without a destination is really great. Just finding out things that might be in the neighborhood that I didn't know about, taking a side street that I haven't gone down. So there's something about that, the rhythm of walking, the rhythm of music, that I think realigns your brain. So I do my best realignment through music and through walking.
That's great. In terms of music, any specific music genre?
Oh, I like various, but I actually put out did you hear about this? My collection on Spotify I put out. It's called Unpausable. And there's a whole lot of different tracks there which are very upbeat for switching your brain. So there's a variety there that I go to. I've just seen Sting in concert in Tokyo twice. He's one of my all-time favorites. But he's for a
Sting is great.
different, yeah, he's for a different sort of situation. For an upbeat change of mood, I'll flick on that Unpausable playlist on Spotify or find something just random on Spotify that I'll play. Again, maybe curiosity, Yoko, to learn something else or do something else. I'm really not fixated on any particular genre, but something upbeat that will change my mood.
That's great. And I was picturing you listening to upbeat music and walking around your office and with
Exactly.
smile.
That's exactly, you got that picture spot on.
As you kindly shared, you have achieved a lot and like brought lots of successes. Has your definition of success changed over time?
Yes, I think early in my career it meant advancing to the next level, passing exams, and perhaps even getting recognized for that. And that may even be those awards up until 2023. But now I really feel success is about sustainable impact. Am I building something that will continue to create value after I've gone? Even if you don't name it's me who helped you with it. Is there something that I can change or develop? Am I developing other people? Am I contributing to positive change in my industry community and the companies I work with? And again, this podcast is a perfect example of that shift. It's not about me, it's about creating a platform for other people's wisdom to reach more people. So that's how I maybe define success now. If someone can be changed positively after interacting with me, that's success.
That's great. And Catherine, yes, you kept saying this podcast is not about you, and guests have a lot of wisdom, but at the same time, you have a lot of wisdom and a lot to offer to the listeners too. So it will be good to do this kind of podcast where you are a special guest to share once in a while.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you very much. It's probably I think you're the third after Jane has interviewed me and Angela Krantz interviewed me. And yes, I'd not forget Akio, who also interviewed me. So fourth.
Correct. Fourth.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
You're creating a pattern for me. I appreciate that. Good idea.
Well, listeners of your podcast likely include working parents who are trying to figure out work life balance or work life harmony. Do you have any advice or tips to these working parents?
I think you hit on it though. It's integration. It doesn't seem to be balance. I don't think there's balance. The idea of perfect work-life balance, I think it just sets impossible expectations. So I think instead look for ways to integrate your various roles as authentically as you can. Maybe that means bringing lessons from parenting into your leadership or sharing your professional skills with your family life. Some people I know have like family meetings that they run according to the way they run their office meetings. And it's kind of fun in a way to do that. At least give it a try. Also, I think model the behavior that you want to see. If you want your children to pursue some meaningful work and contribute to their communities, like my dad, show them what that looks like and do it.
That's great. Thank you. And in the past podcast, you talked about the importance of pushing the door to open. Could you please talk about that a little again?
Yeah, I think we come across many doors, and they might be in the form of somebody offering you something to do, a project, or join a group, or be part of maybe a panel discussion, or be a guest host on a podcast. And you push the door open and just say yes to it, right? You push it. You can close the door again if it doesn't feel right, but you can also push the door and keep going in and give it a try. And you can then come out the door again. So you don't always have to be behind the door doing something that you've said yes to. You can come back through again, but at least pushing that door open is always open to you. The other one is sticking your foot in the door so that others can go through. So that's why I fully believe in this phrase of the door to opportunity is always marked push. It's a matter of whether you push it or not. It's up to you, but it is definitely always there for you. You have to have your eyes open and look, but there's plenty of doors around us. And so if someone's listening to this now, I wonder after they've finished what doors they'll see are ready for them to push open.
And then your message will apply here too. Be curious and take the courage and push the door to open and see what's there. And then also your approach will be generous to others and keep the door open for others.
Yes, that's right.
As you do in your podcast, I like to finish up this episode with some quick and fun questions.
Oh, right.
If you weren't a lawyer, what other career paths might you have chosen?
Ooh, I think it's become obvious, has it not? But an investigator or a documentary filmmaker about murder mystery. Not too gory, though. I don't like blood, but I'm really fascinated by stories that reveal these kind of murders. I'm so hooked on FBI crime dramas on TV. And in a way, this podcast scratches that itch a little bit, uncovering real stories behind success. But a combination of that, getting out and doing investigative storytelling with human psychology, and well, I can't get over the blood bit, right? Because there's a lot of that in these programs, but something like that, a filmmaking documentary, coordinating people and creating something like that would be such a fun job, I think.
Great. Again, your curiosity piece.
The other one I always thought was interior designer. If I had a lot more creativity, I think I might want to do that as a job too.
That's great. If you could master one new skill instantly, what would it be?
Drawing.
Ah,
I have this, I'd love just, lots of incredible information from these interviews doing the podcast and lots of patterns and insights. I'd just love to be able to draw those visually, show them in like sophisticated drawings or really cute manga kind of drawings. There's something about visual storytelling that I think is different again to words. That would be something I would really love to be good at, drawing.
there is a Japanese proverb, 百聞は一見にしかず. Equivalent of that is seeing is believing. But yes, visual has so much power, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And fun and quick question. What's something surprising about you that most people don't know?
I don't like ice. I don't like cold drinks. At restaurants, I ask for them to melt the ice cream if I get served ice cream for dessert.
You order melting ice cream?
Yeah, I actually ask them to put it in the microwave for 4 to 5 seconds so it gets silky melty. And yes, their eyebrows do raise, but there's one restaurant in Tokyo called Wakanui, a New Zealand restaurant, and I walk in and they already know melted ice cream? Yes, please. So that's one thing.
You may be the first person who rather like to have ice cream melted.
Oh, I love it melted. I don't like it in its proper format, shall we say. I think ice cream should be eaten melted.
Well, I guess we learn something new every day. And
right?
Yes,
the next time we go to a restaurant, you know what's going to happen with the ice cream.
Yes.
There you go.
Here you go. Well, thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing your valuable insights and experiences. It's been such a pleasure having you as a special guest on this show and hearing all your insights and stories. I'm sure the listeners will take away a lot from your stories and wisdom. Cheers, kanpai, and bye for now.